Driving any vehicle from Indiana to Alaska is a challenge, and even today, somewhat dangerous. But doing it in 3 weeks on a sport motorcycle? I was 51 years old when I did it, and I think most people that age would hesitate to attempt such a sprint, even in an RV. And we didn't have one of those. The first 2 days were uneventful as we raced up Indiana, across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to Fargo. The next morning brought the dullest part of our journey, the unvarying stretches of prairie in North Dakota and much of Montana, finally dispersed by the Rocky Mountains and Glacier National Park. Exhausted from riding, we slept well. The next day we spent learning that Glacier offers among the best and closest mountain scenery we would see on the tour. The Alaska trip in August of 1998 was my 5th motorcycle tour, but twice as far as I'd ever gone before. I covered 8,000 miles in 18 days astride a 1989 Yamaha FJ1200, which, with a new Corbin seat and a taller Targa windscreen, treated me a lot better than those who were unfamiliar with the performance and dependability of this old sport touring bike would expect. Sure, it gave me a little butt burn, what motorcycle doesn't, and a persistent pain between my shoulder blades, likely from the riding position. But as usual, it left me yearning for more. I rode with 2 friends, Doug Hancock on a Honda Goldwing and Chris Smith on a BMW LT1000. We encountered some of the worst roads and some of the best scenery in North America. Earlier, after leaving the U.S., we rode all day through Alberta before reaching the touristy city of Banff, where we stopped for dinner and sightseeing. We found Banff fun, though a bit pricey, and got more pleasure the next morning from the numerous elk we discovered alongside the roadway just outside our campground. Parks Canada promotes the Icefields Parkway as one of the world's greatest mountain high roads. And I think few people who've driven the 143 miles between Lake Louise and the town of Jasper would dispute their claim. After that first day's breathtaking ride through the Canadian Rockies, we spent the night on the Fraser River at a lovely campground in the Mount Robeson Provincial Park, just west of Jasper. We wanted to do some whitewater rafting here, but didn't have the time. The Fraser was the first of several beautiful Canadian rivers we would cross or follow, making our way through British Columbia and the Yukon Territory. Camping next to those mountain streams was my favorite way of ending a long, hard day of riding. But finding riverside campgrounds was unexpectedly difficult. We managed to do it only 2 other times, on the Tetsa River in British Columbia and Wolf Creek outside of Whitehorse in the Yukon. And on both of those occasions, the campground hosted even charges for the experience. During the night on the Fraser, we saw rain for the first time since leaving Indiana. The heat and dry weather contributed to what we saw the next day, a forest fire, one of a half dozen we would drive right past on our trip. The 1,422-mile Alaska Highway begins in Dawson Creek, British Columbia. That's where we stopped for a day to rest, do our laundry, and change the oil in our bikes. The highway's milepost 0 stands in the middle of an intersection in the middle of the town. Also in the middle of things was the endless construction on the highways. The repair of frost heaves and attempts to straighten the road had made loose gravel warnings the most common road sign we saw. Of course, loose gravel, the oil used in the road repairs, and the water that's often applied to reduce dust make for nightmarish riding conditions. The road conditions and great distances between services weren't the only things we had to worry about on the Alaska Highway. We often had to share the roadway with caribou, mountain goats, moose, elk, bears, or other wildlife. But of course, that's a great big part of why we came. I can't say how far we rolled on dirt and gravel, but it was more than 600 miles. In return, we were permitted to inhale a world few Americans have known. Mountain lakes, large and deep, without even a rowboat disturbing the surface. Mile after mile of wilderness, without a single power line or telephone pole blocking the view. Wherever we stopped for gas or food, the hum of a generator greeted our ears. Then there was Watson Lake, a small community on the roadside which allows visitors to post street signs from their hometowns. They call it the signpost forest, like messages on Facebook. Thousands had been left. Chris and I left the Alcan at Whitehorse to see Dawson City. Dawson City, the former capital of the Yukon, the so-called Paris of the North, and the center of the Klondike Gold Rush. We reached Dawson after 11 o'clock at night, but daylight lingered, and many residents of this land of the midnight sun were going about their business as if it were late afternoon. In 1998, Dawson was a magnet not for sourdoughs and claim jumpers, but European tourists and college students on summer break. But it retained much of its colorful past, including a casino, dance halls, and unpaved streets and sidewalks. Remember those frost heaves? Dawson was where you'd find history and adventure in one small but delightful package. The 67 miles between Dawson and the Alaska border we spent essentially in the clouds on the top of the World Highway as it winds its way through grizzly bear country. The TOW gave us an exciting, though cold, mountain ride until we reached Alaska. Across the border, the road becomes the Taylor Highway. This is a 120-mile washboarded gravel road that was so rough we could barely exceed 20 miles an hour on our motorcycles. That's about half as fast as a grizzly can run. Chris and I actually spent a little time in the 49th state, less than 24 hours. A village called Chicken was the highlight, offering us a little more than a gas station and small restaurant. It took us a week to make it back down the Alaska Highway to Dawson City, east on the Trans-Canada Highway to Ontario, and then south through Wisconsin and Illinois to the Hoosier State and the approaching 21st century. I was greeted well on my return. I'm not sure exactly how many miles I put on the FJ. All those bad roads finally took out the speedometer cable near Moncho Lake, British Columbia. I know I needed more than a half a day to tighten loose connections and clean off the bugs off the bike and myself. The whole trip cost me less than $3,000, including the speeding ticket I got, not from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but from an Indiana state trooper less than 20 miles from my home. Oh well, I'd do it again if I could.